We musicians are complicated creatures. Our passions for the music overflows into everything. As artists, we've got a lot to talk about. So let's dive right into today's conversation. Welcome to Conversations, Love, Life, Wisdom, and Drums. And today my guest is none other than Mrs. Hammer, Dr. Stephanie Bennett.
Hi.
She's also my wife, which you guys all know.
Hi, Mr. Bennett. Hi, the drum father.
Dr. Bennett.
Hello there. We are having a conversation today, and we thought we'd bring you guys into it. One of the things we've been doing for many decades, we won't say exactly how many years, but for many, many decades since we're married, is having conversations about love, life, wisdom, and drums. Always about drums. So one of the reasons for this new show, we'll see if it takes off and if you guys have questions or if you guys like it, is because when we were in our 20s and teens, we didn't really have anyone ahead of us giving us any kind of mentoring or advice or help or even listening to what it meant to be married to a musician or two musicians together or two creatives together, or how to manage the whole creative process when one maybe needs a whole swath of time and the other one wants like that whole swath of time for himself or herself. So we thought that we would just start up a conversation and open it up to you all and see what you think.
So today's conversation is going to be about relationships as it relates to being a musician, a drummer, an artist, a writer, and how relationships kind of work together. And this conversation concept was my wife's concept. This was something she brought in. And as you know, I brought some other friends in to talk about love and life and wisdom and drums. So there will be a drum focus, but it's really more about a life focus today and about, how we interacted to make this last 39 years really work. And I'm not afraid to say 39 years because we were married a long time.
Well, what they're going to say, but then you married a 2-year-old. I mean, no.
Of course they are going to say that. I was only 6 months at that time. So.
You're so fresh. You're going to bring that up already?
I'm not going to bring nothing up.
All right. Well, I'll start us out and see what you think here. One of the biggest problems with being married to either, a drummer, if you're the husband and you're married to a drummer wife, or you're the wife, you're married to a drummer husband, and you're not a musician, is that you want that person's time. You want to spend time with that person. And they want to spend time with you too, but just because they want to spend time on their music doesn't mean they don't want to spend time with you. Now, even if you have two musicians or two creative types like you and I, and we gave each other time our whole lives, like eagerly supporting each other in our creative endeavors, there's still that time crunch. And like, well, what about me? What about me? What about our relationship? So I thought we could talk a little bit about how we manage that. And first of all, maybe starting with why it's important. And, I'll say right out, like, I think it's important because if you don't have a happy spouse, are you going to have a happy life? I mean, we can just so much make our own happiness, and then it's moot. You have to really
but
care.
There also needs to be space for coming together. So let's talk a little bit about navigating that life when we were young. Let's go back a long time ago in a land far, far away, okay?
Okay, what about that?
So let's talk about, I did a lot of gigs when I was young, and then one day Lucy wanted to be in the show, right? And when I was doing gigs when we were younger, we had little kids, and it was how we paid the bills. It was one of the ways we paid the bills. So being in bands and doing gigs and rehearsals and things to get ready for gigs were all part of the life, but it took a toll. It took a toll because I'm working a full-time job, and you're home with the kids, and that was a full-time job, and then doing music was another part. So there was a lot going on to keep the music alive during those days. And we jumped in responsibility. That's why when you're young and you're not connected to anybody, there's more time to practice. But there wasn't a lot of time to practice back in that day that I remember.
No, I mean you were practicing before we got married. You used to haul that drum kit out into your living room. You practice all.
Well, that was at my mom's house, but I mean, when we got married, um, there wasn't a whole lot of time to practice drums, except for once in a while, you know, on the weekends, I might have a few minutes to sit down and play some drums if I wasn't playing a gig that weekend.
Well, that's what I was going to say. Since you were a gigging drummer, you were already playing almost every weekend between the church and gigs that you would get. You were already playing, and we wouldn't call that practice, but was staying in the rhythm,
Right.
staying that way. So it wasn't like you just put it away for a month ever or 6 months. And anytime we got a chance, I remember loving to have like those drums. Remember how long the drums were set up in our living room?
Yeah, we've had periods of time where the living room was part of where the drums ended up set up. There's a few pictures of us in the old Asbury house or
Yeah.
in the brick house too.
Yeah.
But I guess what I was trying to say about this and where I was trying to go with this, and this is the hard thing, is trying to define. I had a moment there where I thought I knew what I was saying, was you supported me in that role to let me put the drums in the living room. You know what I mean? And I think that that's one of the things that I know a lot of guys kind of tell me they don't get that support. I think the way you showed me the support early on was by embracing the drums and even bringing it into your writing. Like when you
Yeah.
started writing for Modern Drummer, that was really about you kind of learning what I did.
Right.
So tell me about how you did that, because that was the other side. You married a drummer. You wanted the drummer to be there still because that's part of who I was.
Right.
I wanted you to be a writer. That was going to be who you were too.
Right.
And then we found a way to kind of put the two together somehow. You found a way.
Well, it wasn't always easy, as we recall. Having 3 children and trying to find a place for them for babysitting, we would gig late at night. When I started being in the band, we started our own band, and I would manage the band and do the lead singing. My goodness, I also was trying to find the babysitter. I wasn't hauling equipment most of the nights, but I was dealing with the babysitter stuff. I was dealing with getting the kids ready, picking them up in the middle of the night from your parents at 1 in the morning or 2 in the morning, sometimes letting them stay. And so it wasn't easy. We were tired. I remember looking back, like we were tired. We were working hard. It was a lot. I think, like many young people's lives today, to make ends meet, to pay the rent. It's not. It is a challenge, but it was worth it. With our life, I fell in love with you, the whole you, and I couldn't imagine separating drums from you. You were so good at drums, but not just that. It was like.
I remember like when we got pregnant with Matt and Sanj. It was Matt, I think, when I was like, I got to get another job. We're not making enough money. You know what I mean?
And what did you say?
I said I'm gonna just stop playing drums.
And what did I say?
You said no, you can't stop playing drums.
No, because like that would be, first of all, I think, to go back to your question about why some people don't support each other, there's a multitude of reasons, and reasons we don't even have time or really expertise to go into in terms of psychological reasons in this little show. But one of the reasons is people are insecure. They want to know that they're loved, that they didn't just marry a person that's going off doing their own thing, and
Right.
that there's no solid relationship. What we did was and people will say, let's support each other's stuff, but when you're in time crunches, when you're in a money crunch, when you're maybe tired, you haven't had enough sleep, it's very easy to snip at each other and not be supportive and take away that support and say, you're not paying enough attention to this. But you were always so solid about our relationship and our family being foundationally important. You didn't want to take anything away from that.
Right.
I think the hardest time, hon, was when you were in like three bands at once. You were touring with Saved by Grace. You were doing an album with Saved by Grace. You were in the worship team band. You were with another band, that trio, doing weddings and stuff like that. And I was starting to feel like, as much as I wanted to support this and did support it, was like, I missed you. And I think, to express that honestly and to stay close every day like we did through coffee time is something that helps to talk about these things, talk about the push pull there. I mean, you eventually decided, yeah, this is a lot, plus my full time job. I need to like pull out a little bit. There various things happen that you needed to pull back a little bit. But to your question, why you said a lot of your listeners and your viewers say, like, they don't get that support. Well, I guess I would say is, and please take this right, but give that support first. Prioritize your relationship. Remember that gigs come and go, but your person,
Right.
your person is your person.
You got to hold on to what you have first,
and put that as the priority.
And you have to put them as a priority, and then things will all kind of come together. And I think that the idea of putting each other first, like I wanted you to see you succeed too. That's why when you wanted to go write for the paper and things, I encourage you to do those things. And I think our early years, we really kind of navigated it kind of interestingly, you know. And then as we got older and the kids got older and we were able to do some of the dream stuff, like working on, like starting you writing songs and starting to work on your album, which took 15 years to by the way, to produce. It wasn't something that came overnight, but we did demos and things. All those years of that, there was a lot of support for each other, and you singing on the worship team and me playing on the worship team, and then eventually us not doing any music that way and doing it other ways, you know, doing other things. There was always something going on, it seemed like, to keep us there. But you always supported me, told me to keep playing, and wherever we could, we would play together until we left Jersey. I think we were gigging every year. We did a few gigs.
We were, and that was so much fun too. The fact that we could make double money,
right?
You know what I mean? I could contribute to the household that way, besides just my writing.
Right.
And we got to be together. I learned so much from you, Earl Bennett. I don't know. I think maybe I told you that before, but not
only
enough.
A couple times.
But maybe not enough.
No,
because I remember you were the consummate professional, and I was out there like, what if I forget the lyrics? And and you're like, just keep singing, no one will even notice. And and you always
like
had
the
this
bass player,
Oh gosh, oh my goodness!
Just keep playing. So you turn his volume off and just play. And
stop!
Don't get into that.
But no, we had a lot of fun, and you're right, we did navigate choppy waters, and I think every couple does. But there are certain dynamics in a creative couple that are a little bit different than the other, because sometimes competition can come in. Thankfully, we didn't have that competition. You're more the musician, I'm more the writer.
Yeah, I think being lead singer, composer, there was things you brought, but then there were things you couldn't do, the technical side and the setups. And
I love to entertain people. I love to be there singing for them, crooning for them as they're falling in love, and they're dancing together. They're celebrating their life at a wedding, and making them chuckle and just setting the backdrop for their wonderful time. We haven't done that. I haven't done that in 20 years. I mean, that was a long time ago.
Yeah, I think I haven't done a lot of gigs in town since we moved to Florida. Florida changed everything for us. Florida was, I had 40 years, well, I was 40 years old when we moved here, and I had over 20 years of playing gigs in town that people knew me. And then now I come to a world where nobody knows me. So it's taken 20 years to be known in South Florida. And the circles I went into, we chose, those were decisions we made. Like by the time we moved to Florida, the real job was taking precedence. You were teaching university and getting your PhD, and our kids were growing up. They're in their teenage years. They needed us. So I didn't need to be out playing every weekend at that point in time. What I needed to do was be home and be stable. And that's when I did your album. I focused on your album. So the hard thing was finding musicians to play when you're not out there playing with musicians. So and then they just kept coming to me. I kept finding people.
Finding non-flaky musicians. Well, that was also a period.
Non-flaky musicians.
Did I say that? I should have said that. Listen,
how many flaky musicians do we have in that band? Our wedding band.
Stop.
Oh my gosh.
No offense. No offense. Okay, but during that time when we moved to Florida, I think strategy moved from like gigging to just praying. I remember starting to pray, Lord, please find my husband some gigs. Lord, please find him some people to play with, because you're always at your best and your most confident and your most fun and happy self when you're playing. And I love to see that.
Yeah.
And I think the bottom line here is, when you love someone, don't you want to see them happy and flourish? I think maybe some couples get a little bit too possessive, and I say that really carefully, because I I don't know if I want to use the word possessive, but I'm not sharing you with anybody.
Well, no, we're not sharing each other.
I'm saying you're mine, and I'm yours. But I think that sometimes couples can get like possessive, like he's mine, she's my property, and like want to enclose that person and isolate them just for themselves. But like, I don't know, we never thought that way.
If I was to do that to you, that wouldn't have been good.
No, because I love people, and I love to be around people.
You had to find who you were. You needed to get out there and do the things you did. I remember the time when you basically were saying our kids were growing up, and you said, I'm just going to go work at the Publix or the Food Town or the ShopRite, whatever the local supermarket is, And I'm like, that's not what you're going to do. You're going to do way more than that. And you did.
I just want you to know, I respect and love those clerks at the Food Town and Publix and ShopRite.
It's not about loving the clerks. I know. It's about, what are you called to do? You weren't called to be a clerk at Publix.
At 16. I was. But no, you're right. I'm just making a joke here.
We have our moments, but it was like you felt like there was nothing for you to do. Like you'd raised kids, and now you were not relevant.
Well, I was 14 years into raising kids at home, writing my little articles.
And that changed everything. That changed everything in your mind. So I'm saying that's not the real world. The real world was you were relevant. So you got a job. You were already writing for newspapers. You got a job working for the newspaper as in the marketing department. And that was the thing that brought you to where you are today.
Right. And all of it is acknowledging, I think, the fact that people grow, people emerge, people develop, and who we are at 21 is not the same as who we are at 41. And if we want to stay close with our spouse and our friends as we're changing, that we need to change together and keep each other abreast of those changes.
And that's the trap for a musician who's stuck on their own world, and they don't acknowledge the other people around them in it. And that's how a lot of musicians lose their families, their children, their spouses, their girlfriends, whatever, is when you get so myopic into your world.
Yeah.
And I think that's the trap of the music business, is that the music business can basically take somebody and they become successful, but then they lose those other things. And we weren't willing to give that up. That's where we kind of drew a line.
Right.
I remember being in the band, with Will and Ray, and it was a band called Water at the time. And those guys wanted to go out and play clubs and like basically quit your day job almost and go play clubs at night every night of the week. And I was like, this is not happening. I just got this job, and this is a career path move.
And I didn't have to beg you to do that.
You didn't have to beg me
I didn't have to say, oh, don't go out and play clubs, dear. I need you home. I didn't have to say anything. You knew you wanted to be there.
It was kind of like, no, it's like, I'm not doing this.
That's right.
So I chose to not do that. And when I chose not to do that, that changed the course. I didn't go, and they didn't make it anyhow. But if they had made it, if they had made it as a band, I would have missed that boat. But you know what? That boat wasn't where I was supposed to be. So knowing where you're supposed to be is another part of this life.
It's true.
And getting it, and when you attach yourself to somebody, like in marriage, you make a commitment, then it's till death do us part. This is what we believe.
Yeah, and you work it out. Now, the name of their show is Love, Life, Wisdom, and Drums. And I always want to make sure that if we do any more of these, we always bring something specific of the drums into it. So I will say, I remember.
No, we're not going to bring any drums.
Oh, I wanted to say, look at this. Don't cut. Look at your brushes, okay? One of your sets of brushes. I never knew what brushes were before I married you until we started gigging and you started stirring that soup.
Stirring the soup.
Oh my gosh. I love those jazz standards, and it made me fall in love with you even more.
I got a crush on you.
How glad the many millions.
That's right.
I love it. Anyway, do you think they've had enough?
Probably have had enough.
We're so glad you've joined us to Love, Life, Wisdom, and Drums. Please leave us a comment, a question. Let us know if you want any more, or if we can, if you've got questions, we'd love to answer them.
Thanks for watching. Bye.